and push that red button to see what others are saying. So the question we're addressing tonight is who should lead the Labour Party? Please welcome Jeremy Corbyn and Owen Smith. Good. Well, welcome to you both. Thank you very much. Let's have our first question from Stephen Williams, please. Stephen Williams.
Mr Corbyn has no support from his MPs. Mr Smith has no support from his party. Should they not both stand aside and let a unity candidate unite the party?
Well, that's a good start. Did you get the question? You have no support from MPs. You have no support from party members. Step aside, both of you, and unite the party. You start, Jeremy.
There's no absolutes on either party in this respect. Yes, there is a huge support in the party for a direction of this party of opposing austerity and campaigning for equality across Britain. Yes, a number of MPs do support me. A large number of MPs do not. I fully understand that. But I tell you this, when this election is over, if I'm elected the leader of the party, I hope the MPs will come together. We will, once again, have a shadow cabinet that is balanced and is extended to all wings of the party, and we'll get together to take on the Tories and what they're doing to education, to health, to housing, and creating greater inequality in this country. That's what I'm offering.
Okay. Just before I come to Owen Smith, what makes you think 80% of the parliamentary party who abandoned you are suddenly going to come flooding back to you?
Well, I've been talking to lots of them. You know, MPs talk to each other a great deal, and I think after the election is over and after the conference is over, you will see the wish of MPs to reflect the wishes of party members all over the country that there's a coming together in order to oppose this Tory government.
Okay, Owen Smith.
Well, I think there's still 3 weeks to go in this contest, and it's an incredibly important choice that we face here before us in the Labour Party. I'm incredibly proud that I got the support of 170 of our 220 MPs in Westminster, and I think that shows that I can command respect and support in the Parliamentary Labour Party, where we have to take the fight to the Tories and build that case for a future Labour government. But I'm also pleased that in the one vote we've had in this contest so far, in the GMB, one of the great trade unions of this country, I won. 40,000 people voted, 26,000 voted for me, 17,000 for Jeremy. So I'm incredibly confident that I can win this contest. And I say to everybody in the Labour movement right now, it's in your hands. The choice is with you right now as to whether we want to be with Jeremy and in opposition, potentially for a generation, or start leading the way back to Labour being in power. That's where we need to be, and that's what I intend to deliver.
Okay, Stephen Williams, do you want to come back on the point? What's your view?
I think you're willing that you just divide...
Let's get the microphone to him. Yeah, off you go.
The squabbles now have made the party look unelectable, and both of you look unelectable. You should stand aside and let somebody else, maybe Harry Arm and someone like that, somebody, just anybody, lead the party to victory. Otherwise, it's 10 more years of Conservative government that nobody wants, especially not you two, I'm sure. You know, so stand aside.
Well, thanks for your vote of confidence. I really appreciate it. I just say this to you. Over the past year, we've recruited 300,000 members to the Labour Party. That's surely got to be something worth noticing. And that 80% of the constituency parties, local parties that nominated me for the leadership. Now, you might not think Owen or I have the wherewithal or capabilities to do things, but I'm sure you would understand that those people that have nominated us both think we can do the job, both want the party to succeed, and that very large body of members want to go door-knocking, campaigning and all that kind of thing. I think what you've had is a few weeks of incredibly negative press about the party because of the leadership election, and indeed we've had a whole year of negative press about the party. I think after the conference you'll see something happening which will be that unity to take on the Tories and what they're doing in this country. I really do believe that.
Stephen, I admire Jeremy's optimism, but I don't think that's what we'll see. The truth is that it's not just the 300,000 new members we've seen in the last year. We've seen Labour going backwards. We're back at 26-27% in the polls. Right now, the chances are that we would be out of power for a generation. If there was an election tomorrow, Labour would lose 40, 50, 60 seats. We're back to where we were in the 1980s. The entire reason I'm standing in this campaign is in order to get Labour back to where it needs to be. Taking on the Tories, really defending our record, standing up for what we believe in and presenting a credible alternative to the Tories, instead of which I think Jeremy is more satisfied with leading the Labour Party in opposition. I'm never going to be satisfied with that. I want to lead us back to government.
How will you lead better than he does?
Well,
how will you unite the party?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to be a credible opposition. And I'll take today, for example. Today we've seen a 20% rise announced in the last year in 0 hours contracts. We've seen 1 million extra people announced today on waiting lists in the NHS. And the Tories doing something not even Margaret Thatcher dared to do, bringing back two-tier education. Jeremy hasn't commented on any of these things. The Tories are running amok in this country right now. And we, the Labour Party, all of us here tonight, everybody right across this party, not just the Parliamentary Labour Party, we're all guilty. We're all guilty of letting down not our party, the people we seek to serve, the people who need a Labour government to get those waiting lists down, to invest in the NHS, to make sure we don't have grammar schools back in this country. But we can't do any of that in opposition. We've got a win to do it. It's not a dirty word. It's what we're about.
Okay. We've got a number of hands up. And I'll go to you first, and I'll go round. I'll start with you. Hold on a second, Jeremy. Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but up until the mass resignations that took place within the Labour Party within the PLP, were we not ahead by a couple of percent? Wasn't it at that point? Was it not after the point of the mass resignations that we started falling backwards?
No.
Was it not?
Let me correct you, sir. No, thanks for the question. I will correct you. You are wrong. In 89 polls, under Jeremy's leadership, we were behind in 85 of them. We were level pegging in 4. We are at a lower ebb in the polls than we have been since 1982, when I was 12 years old. We're disastrous. We're disastrous in the polls. We were behind in 85 polls in a row under Jeremy. Before the PLP resigned, we were behind, and we're further behind right now.
None over there, and then, Jeremy, it'll be your turn. Yes, you, sir, on the left there.
My name is Saeed Maruf Ali, and what I would like to say to you, Jeremy, is ignore some of the negative comments that are coming, because I've been a Labour Party supporter for a very long time, and I walk up and down the street, knocking on doors, and you know what? People love you. People want you to be the Prime Minister. The reason why they want you to be the Prime Minister, because you care about them. They know that you're going to fight for justice. They know that you're going to fight for poverty, education, employment.
He can make the speech. He can make the speech. Well done, well done. All right, we've heard from a staunch supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. I'd like to hear from a staunch supporter of Owen Smith's campaign. Yes, you, sir.
It's fair to say, yes, the Labour Party membership has gone up, but why did we get annihilated in Scotland behind the Tories?
And what's your view about the Smith campaign?
Well, I think that the Labour Party is in a sad situation, because I can't say my heart's beating either side, to be honest with you. I think it's sad that we have the boos when we oppose Jeremy, but I think that Owen's campaign is more balanced. It's one thing to have principles and beliefs, but you have to sell it to the British people in our electoral system, and Scotland showed that you didn't do that.
All right, and the woman back there.
One of the reasons why I'm supporting Owen is that I believe the Parliamentary Labour Party is sort of the fundamental, most important thing that we need to be focusing on in order to win an election. It's what makes us electable. But I've been on the committee of our sort of young CLP group for a while, and I've just been so disappointed. The discourse hasn't been constructive, it's been divisive, it's been abusive at times. I've just disassociated myself with it completely because it just upsets me. And you can hear it here tonight with people booing when either side comes on, and it's both sides, but I've heard it mostly from Jeremy's side, and I think that that's a fact. And it just upsets me. We're one party, and at the end of this, I don't want people to split and leave. I've had people who've been members for 30 years tell me they want to leave if Jeremy wins, if Owen wins, and it's not right. We're one party, and I think that what's happening tonight and what's happening in general is just disgraceful.
Okay. You, sir.
Jeremy, why have you not considered your core vote? You may have the support of your membership, but you certainly do not have the support of your core vote, which is what counts, and that's what wins a general election.
Jeremy Corbyn.
First of all, on the point taken from the back there should be no abuse, there should be no online abuse, there should be no Twitter abuse, there shouldn't be abuse in political debate. I never make personal attacks on anybody. That's not the way I conduct myself, and I want other people not to do the same. Yes, the party has to come together. Yes, after this election is over, the result will be announced, and from that point on, we've got to be a strong campaigning party. We were more or less level pegging with the Tories until there was this series of resignations from the shadow cabinet and the leadership election was brought about. And I hope that Owen will understand that after this election there has to be a coming together, and that all members of the Parliamentary Labour Party will be prepared to come together to achieve that. Your point about the core vote. The core vote is of people that have consistently voted Labour for very many years. It's also a very large number of people who are intrinsically inclined towards Labour but haven't bothered to vote in the past. Only 47% of young people voted in the last general election. I tell you this now, there is a re-energisation of politics over the past year. Many of those that have joined the party, many of those that are very active in local groups, are very well connected with colleges, with universities, with young people at work. I tell you this, after this leadership is over, there's going to be that energisation in politics which will challenge the Tories. What are the Tories offering us? They're offering us greater inequality. They're offering us continuation of low wages and in many cases 0 hours contracts. They're now offering selectivity in education rather than universality in education, which is something I passionately believe in. They're not offering anything that will solve the housing crisis that people face all across this country. A Labour opposition offering investment in a growing economy, a Labour opposition offering to invest to drive down the inequalities in Britain and invest in a growing economy with sustainable jobs, I think that's something that's very attractive and will bring an awful lot of people over to Labour.
Let's just... I'll come to you. I'd just like to take one more question about the future after this thing is over, this election is decided. Maureen Kelly has a question. Maureen Kelly.
If Jeremy wins the contest, will it inevitably lead to a split in the party?
As many have suggested. Owen Smith, what do you think?
Well, I hope and I pray that it doesn't, because one of the reasons I run in this contest is to stop a split.
Well, the question... No, wait a minute. The question was, will it inevitably lead? Well, no, of course you hope it doesn't lead to a split.
I don't think it does inevitably lead to a split.
How is it avoided, then?
Well, I think Jeremy or I, whoever wins this contest, needs to work incredibly hard to heal the rifts that has been described.
So you'll work with him if he wins?
I've already said that I will happily vote Labour. I've always voted Labour.
You'll go in a shadow cabinet of his?
Well, I've said previously that I couldn't, I think, serve Jeremy with integrity, because I don't think Jeremy can lead us to victory.
So the division is already there?
Well, the division is clearly there.
Would you urge the 80% to come behind Jeremy, or would you say the 80% can stay to one side and let him get on with it because he's going to lose anyway?
I think it's for others to choose in the PLP what they do, but
well, you're claiming to lead the party. You must have a view on this.
I have got a view, and my view is that I will not serve in Jeremy's shadow cabinet, because I don't feel I could do that with integrity. But that isn't to split the party, because I will always be Labour. I'm never going to lead the Labour Party. I'm never going to leave it. I'm always going to be Labour till the day I die. I've always been Labour. But I am worried, you see, because this is at the heart of it. It's about reality. And Jeremy says we were ahead in the polls. We weren't. Jeremy says that we're doing OK in Scotland. We're not. We've gone from second to third, behind the Tories. And Jeremy says that he can win through getting non-voters to come back and vote Labour, when all of the psephologists, all of the numbers tell us, everybody who's ever knocked a door in this country knows that we will not win by getting non-voters. The way we win is by getting people who voted Tory to vote Labour at the next election. And Jeremy is not going to persuade them to do it.
A brief point from you, sir, in the front here.
I think Owen has answered the question. Owen wants the party to split. He's not openly saying that because he's not going to get the support.
No.
Why would a Labour member not serve under Jeremy Corbyn? If he was a true Labour member, he would serve under any Labour leader, as Jeremy has done. So
David, let me respond to that. Let me respond to that,
You're in the wrong party.
Let me respond. Well, that's a sort of abuse we've been subject to during this campaign. I'm a Labour man.
How's that
and
abuse?
I've been Labour throughout my life. Well, it's implying that I'm not Labour, and I've always been Labour, and I will always be Labour. We need, as a family, to come back together and understand that we're all Labour. But the crucial moment when I decided I was going to stand was when John McDonnell said to me that he was prepared to see the party split in order to further his project. That's the moment when I realised we needed to stand up and be counted and make sure that we didn't split the party.
Jeremy Corbyn, do you want to comment on what John McDonnell said? What was
we
it?
had a discussion in my office in which Owen was present, and Owen very generously offered me unopposed election to a non-existent job that wasn't his gift to give if I resigned from the party, which was...
That was actually a different conversation,
Which was really generous of you, Owen.
Different conversation, as I recall.
Listen, Owen, you and I managed to work together quite well on issues surrounding DWP, and indeed we had a major victory on that. All of us had that major victory on that, which was very good. 3 million families didn't lose £1,000 this year because of the victory that we managed to impose on them in the House of Lords and, as well, of course, our opposition in the House of Commons. That was good, surely. So, Owen, I don't fully understand what the problem is. You obviously have enormous talents. Why can't we work together?
Well, I've said it several times, Jeremy. And I'll say it again to you. If I felt that you were going to lead Labour back to power, then I would work with you in the shadow cabinet. But I feel that you are satisfied to lead us in opposition. And we need a leader who is determined to lead Labour back to government. And I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can do it. And I think that is a desperate shame for this country, because we need a Labour government to stop zero-hours contracts, to invest in the NHS, to make sure that we've got decent housing. The only way we will achieve all those things that you want and I want is if we are in government.
Why do you say Mr. Corbyn doesn't think he can do it? I mean, why is he bothering to stand for leadership?
Well, because I saw him, for example, I saw him ask 5 times on Channel 4 once whether he really wanted to be the Prime Minister of this country, and he didn't answer it. And I've seen him in the shadow cabinet opposite me over the last 11 months, offering scant leadership, not discussing those DWP issues. The truth is, Jeremy and I worked together to an extent. I had 1 meeting with Jeremy in 11 months about those DWP issues. Jeremy, I asked to meet you on several occasions to talk about DWP stuff, and you weren't available.
All right. I'll just take 1 or 2 more points on this, then we'll go on to some particular policies. It's you, sir. Hold on a second. Let's get a microphone to you. Right.
Owen, good evening. I wondered if you could explain to me a specific policy, a Labour policy, that you would espouse to, which is completely and utterly different than Jeremy's.
I think we should stay within the European Union, and I've always believed that. Jeremy has campaigned to leave the European Union for 35 years. I think we shouldn't trigger Article 50 and leave immediately. Jeremy says we should trigger Article 50 and leave immediately. I believe we should be members of the single market, even if we are leaving the European Union. Jeremy disagrees with me on that. That's a pretty fundamental difference.
We've got... you take us directly onto a question we've got on this exact subject, so let's go to it, from Robert Barnes, and maybe we'll come back to the leadership issues later. Robert Barnes, please.
Should there be a second referendum on EU membership or the terms of our Brexit negotiations?
Should there be a second referendum on the EU membership or on the terms of Brexit, which is a proposal that Owen Smith put? You've said your bit. Jeremy Corbyn, then come back to you.
I think we have to negotiate with the European Union on the terms of exit. We have to recognise, regrettable as they are, the results of the referendum. We have to ensure we have access to European markets for manufactured goods. We have to ensure protection of workers' rights, consumers' rights, maternity and paternity leave, and many other environmental protection issues that we gain through membership of the European Union. and we have to have that positive relationship with Europe, which means the ability to sell our goods.
Do you want us to remain in the single market if it's possible, or is that impossible in your view?
A single market, if it's possible, and I think it probably is, that means that we have to be prepared to obviously develop those trade relationships with other countries as well. But crucially, 70% of our exports go to Europe already. It makes an awful lot of sense to get on with negotiating now. But those bottom lines also include, I hope, continued membership of the European Investment Bank. I think that's important. But also in other trade treaties we make, such as with the United States. I am very sceptical of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership and the agenda that goes with that. And I would want us to develop trade relations that empower democratic government, don't undermine it to give power to global corporations such as I believe TTIP would do.
And what's your view on controlling immigration, which was one of the issues where Labour voters seemed uncertain about what you thought, and many of them felt very strongly that immigration should be controlled?
Well, non-European immigration is already, of course, subject to a great deal of control. EU free movement of people is an issue that comes directly with market access. The points I was making throughout the referendum campaign was that we should sign the amendments to the Posting of Workers Directive to prevent the undercutting of wages by groups of workers that are brought in from different countries to work in Britain, and that we should try and protect them and their conditions. But communities that have been greatly affected by an influx of people coming into work should be funded properly through a migrant impact fund, which in fact Gordon Brown's government introduced and the Tories abolished, and so that there is support for those communities.
Owen Smith. The country voted out. You say that's not the end of the story.
Well, I say we've got to know what Brexit means. Theresa May says Brexit means Brexit. This week has shown that the Tories haven't got a clue what they think we voted for. David Davis says it means we're leaving the single market, as Jeremy has agreed. Theresa May says it doesn't. Earlier on, they said it meant £350 million a week for the NHS. Clearly, that was a lie. They said there was going to be a points-based system on immigration. That isn't going to happen. We've said that we were going to have all these trade deals done and dusted with Australia and America in a matter of months. Australia and America are saying it could be years before we've got trade deals in place. So my very simple message to the Labour movement is we've got to stand up to the Tories, oppose them properly, hold them to account, negotiate hard alongside them, determine what Brexit's really going to mean, and if it means worse living standards for British people, less money for the NHS, lesser protections for people at work, lesser environmental protections, then we should either at a general election, with Labour arguing that we go back in on the terms of that deal, or potentially at the second referendum, test the actual deal. Not what we were promised, which was clearly a lie, but what the Tories are actually going to deliver. Because I fear they will use this, you see, as an excuse, as Nigel Lawson said just this week, to finish Thatcher's revolution. That's what they've got in mind. It will be an ugly, hard Brexit for Britain, and places like Oldham will suffer.
But unless I misunderstood you, you said you would like to see Labour go into the next election saying our party policy is to go back into the EU.
Yes. I think to
ignore the Brexit vote.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We need to find out what it is. To find out what it is, because Brexit votes set a direction, if you like. We don't know where we're going.
But you do, because you know where you're going, because you're going back in.
I think where we're going, I hope we are. I hope we are, and I think we should be strong about that, because I've always believed that the best things about the European Union, our ability to safeguard workers' rights, our ability to safeguard...
Did you vote for the referendum or not to happen? Were you one of the ones who voted that there should be a referendum?
Yeah, we all voted for it.
You all voted for it, yes. And you don't accept the result?
No, my view is we don't know what we were voting for. We were lied to about the 350 million. Yeah, we were clearly lied to. Theresa May says Brexit means Brexit. I haven't got a clue what she means by that. And I'm very certain Labour should not give them a blank cheque on this.
Okay.
Jeremy is giving them a free ride. I'm saying let's hold them to account and find out what's really going to be on offer. Because if it's worse for the people of Oldham, then of course Labour should be putting in a manifesto that we will improve the livelihoods of the people older.
You didn't say that. You said we'll vote to go back into the EU. Is that feasible?
If that's better for us, yes, we should.
There's a referendum,
Yes, we should.
a referendum has taken place that we supported the holding of that referendum. It's delivered a decision. It might not be a decision that either Owen or I wanted. I think it's the duty of Parliament to work with that. I want to protect the conditions we've gained in Europe. I want market access within Europe. And one of the points that I made during the referendum campaign was the EU also needed to reform, because it was trying to impose privatisation across the continent. It was producing some unpleasant ideas about how national governments should go about running their own national economies. There's always been that debate within Europe. I think we need to negotiate a good trading arrangement with Europe, protects those conditions and gives us market access for British manufacturing industry.
Let's go. I will come to others of you, but let's just go back to Robert Barnes, who asked this question. Robert, what's your view of what you've heard there?
Well, I totally disagree with Owen Smith. Over 17 million people voted to leave the European Union, and the Labour Party, if you were leader, would say, we'll take us back in. That isn't what 17 million people voted for. Brexit means Brexit. We may not know the terms of the negotiation, but what would you do if the Remain side had won and the Leave side said, we want a second referendum? It's hypocritical to turn around and say you want a second referendum. The country voted out, abide by the result.
The woman here on the gangway, yes.
To Jeremy, it's fine saying, you know, you were there at the debating Brexit during the referendum, but we didn't hear that on the doorstep from you at all.
What do you mean, that the referendum could have been won if he'd spoken out more?
I think so, yeah. To get those extra votes, definitely.
Yep.
He did say
we put the case to remain. We could put the case to remain and reform. We didn't win the referendum, obviously. We have to work with the results of it. I did campaign for Remain. I did campaign to remain and reform the European Union. 65% on opinion polls of all Labour voters voted to Remain.
But how did 45% of Labour voters think the party backed Brexit?
35%.
45.
No, 45.
You mean 45% think they back Brexit when 65% voted for?
No, 45% thought the party, almost half the Labour Party thought Labour voted back Brexit.
Well, we didn't.
And you said you were only 7.5 out of 10 in favour.
Well, my criticisms of the European Union were the ones I've already put, such as the attempt to impose privatisation on railway services across Europe. So I don't think the European Union is perfect. I don't think anybody thinks the European Union is perfect.
I'm sure nobody in Europe thinks Europe is perfect. But what about her argument that that was not the moment to be saying those things, but to be saying let's stay in loudly and clearly?
Well, if we'd simply said everything in the European Union was perfect, I suspect we'd have got less votes to Remain than the other way round.
Yes, you saw in the blue shirt there. The man in the blue shirt there. Yeah.
I voted UKIP for the last 2 elections. If the Labour Party's going to get anywhere, it's got to bring those UKIP votes back to itself. I'm faced with a situation as a voter where we've got a gentleman here, should he manage to overcome the democratically elected leader of the Labour Party, he will then overcome, or attempt to overcome, the decisions of the country that we should leave the European Union. Where are we supposed to take our vote? And where's our opposition? We have Theresa May now saying that we don't really want a point system for immigration. Yes, we do. That's what we voted for. But she's saying that's not what the people really want. That's what people do want. But where's the opposition screaming this? They're all hiding behind, we want to go back into the European Union.
Okay.
That is not what we want. That's not what the people voted for.
Can I put a point to you, if I may? Do you think we... Thanks for your question. Do you think we should have an effective trading relationship with Europe?
Yes, we should. We did have before we joined the European Union. We also had arrangements with America. It took us 3 days to send our troops to die for America, and they say it's going to take 9 years to come back with a trade agreement. Where are our politicians? I think we've had the European Union so long, you've forgotten how to make decisions.
Can I ask you a question?
You've forgotten how to represent your country.
Could you just explain, you say you voted UKIP in the last 2 general elections. What made you vote UKIP and leave Labour?
Simply, I simply wanted out of the European Union.
Sorry, you simply wanted...
Out of the European Union.
He did say he voted... You did say you voted Labour before.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear it.
Yes, yes.
I always vote.
I'm glad you always vote.
I'm the older generation. I'm the older generation.
You're obviously a true Democrat. You always vote.
You, sir.
But don't you agree there has to be an effective trading relationship with Europe? And don't you also recognise that 2 million British people also live in other parts of Europe?
Yes,
and
my brother
we
does.
have to accept that there is a very close, often very personal relationship between families here and families all across Europe. And a lot of European nationals that live in this country work extremely hard and help to run our health service and education and many other services.
You want complete freedom of movement, Jeremy Corbyn?
I supported freedom of movement, but I was very concerned, and still am concerned, about the level of undercutting of wages. Look at what's happened with Sports Direct and places like that. There has to be much tougher labour regulations in Britain, and there has to be an end to this undercutting across Europe, where they try and destroy industry-wide agreements. With
great respect, I understand what you're saying, but that is a different point. I mean, is what you're saying that if you had proper minimum wage here, there would be less of a drag of people coming into Britain, and you want that, or that you want open borders?
It's also going to have to be better wages and conditions in other parts of Europe, which is part of what the Posting of Workers Directive issue is all about.
But isn't this pie in the sky compared with the immediate possibility of reducing immigration, which you know was not popular among a lot of Labour voters?
But I ask people to be realistic about what European workers actually do in Britain, the number of people that do help to run our vital services, and the effects on 2 million British people living in other parts of Europe.
Owen Smith.
Well, I think the gentleman's question revealed what I was saying, which is we don't know what we've really voted for, because we haven't got the points-based system you were talking about. We haven't got that extra money for the NHS, and I remain concerned, as I said, that the Tories will use this as an excuse to make us worse off as working people in this country. And I don't think that we, the Labour Party, should be sanguine about that. Even if people voted to leave, I think they voted with an idea of what Britain would look like after we left. And at the moment, that isn't very clear. And equally, I'm very clear that we, the Labour Party, should be being a much more powerful opposition. How on earth can we go through 2 Prime Minister's questions and not mention Brexit? It's the biggest issue that has faced our country in generations. And it's the biggest illustration of the fact that we, our leader right now, isn't holding Theresa May and the Tories to account.
I'll take a couple of quick points and then we'll move on to some other topic. You, sir.
Yeah, my question is, the EU referendum seems to have proven that the core voting bloc of the Labour Party, the working class, the everyman that Labour is supposed to represent, wants something else. They want UKIP, they want Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson, they want nationalism, and they don't want immigration. How is Labour going to change? Are we going to stick to these progressive values, or are we going to reflect the values that the people seem to want?
I think what they want is investment. You know, that's the
thing.
Sorry,
he just defined what they want.
Yeah, I know, but I think the truth is all of those things...
No. But can you answer his definition? Well, and do you think he's right or wrong?
Well, I'm not sure that the answer is nationalism. I think in very many areas of this country that have been traditional Labour voters, you can overlay a map and see where the biggest effects of austerity have been, where the biggest appeal of UKIP has been, where the biggest Brexit vote has been, where the biggest loss of industrial jobs have been. Now, the answer to dealing with some of those things is for a Labour government to invest once more. It's why I've talked about a need for a British New Deal, £200 billion worth of borrowing in order to invest in those areas. And if we invested, that some of the pressures that people feel and some of the concerns I think they've had about immigration could be dealt with and could be dissipated.
Don't you think that you're kind of insulting the intelligence of the voters, saying they've been hoodwinked? I mean, if you say that, everybody who votes Conservative is hoodwinked too. Everything is vague, but still.
They were clearly hoodwinked about the 350 million quid for the NHS, because that's not coming.
That's true. That's not coming.
I was all for Remain.
Would you just restate your point to Jeremy Corbyn, would you?
My point is that calling for a second referendum does seem quite hypocritical. I'm all in favour of Remain. In fact, I'm leaning towards Owen Smith because he wants to remain in the European Union. But the idea that democracy should be done again because we didn't like the results is wrong. It just doesn't make sense.
Either ignore the referendum
or accept the results. It's an advisory referendum. You could ignore it if you like, or you can accept the results. I think ignoring it is a plausible option, but don't go through the facade of a second referendum. That doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm not the one who's calling for a second referendum.
No. Oh, I understand.
Yes, but surely the issue is security for people, security of work, security of health, security of education, security of a growing economy, which comes about if Labour is able to offer an alternative which is about investment, is about collecting the uncollected taxes, is about building the houses that are necessary rather than subsidising the private rented market. All those kind of issues are surely ones that are actually very popular, not just with people who are in a very difficult situation, but with everyone across the country who wants to live in a country of social justice rather than division. Isn't there some support for that idea?
Okay.
I think there is.
If I got a fiver for everybody who has his hand up now, I'd be a rich man by the end of this programme. I've come to a woman instead of a man there. Yes.
So, as you know, 16 and 17-year-olds did not have the right to vote in the EU referendum. So I want to know what you have to say to the young people that feel like this decision has been made for them and how you intend to engage them.
Well, I would say 16 and 17-year-olds absolutely should have had the right to vote in this election. I would extend that right in all referenda and elections to 16 and 17-year-olds, and we might have seen a very different result had we done that. But I don't think it's anti-democratic to say, let's get to the end of the process when we know what is really on offer from the Tories, as opposed to what they promised, and at that point, allow the British people to either rubber stamp the deal, possibly in a general election, rather than a second referendum, or to reject it.
All right. I think we'll move on to another subject. I think we'll leave that for the moment.
Can I quickly answer?
Yes, on the 17-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
16-year-olds should have the right to vote. We did try to get that included. That was not, unfortunately, we were not successful on that. I do think we should include in the negotiations the need for universities to maintain the closest possible relationship with European universities. There's already signs that that is in danger of breaking down. And I do think all of our students should have access to the Erasmus project so we continue that very close, good relationship of young people from all over Europe coming together. That is something that's a plus for all of us. Thank you for your question.
Aaron Mehta, please. Aaron Mehta.
Jeremy Corbyn supports scrapping Trident. Owen Smith supports talks with so-called Islamic State. Why should I take either of you seriously on security?
OK, one of you wants to scrap Trident, one wants to have talks around the table with Islamic State. Why should I take either of you seriously on security? Who wants to go on this first?
I'm
Owen
happy
Smith.
to. I didn't say we should have talks with Islamic State. I absolutely didn't say that. What I said was that the chances were we'd never be able to negotiate with Islamic State, that they are a death cult. And
At some point for us to resolve this, we will need to get people round the table on ISIS.
And I answered two... But you haven't read the first part of my answer, in which I said that we wouldn't be negotiating with IS. In the second part of my answer, having been interrupted by the presenter, I went on to say that in my experience as someone who worked on the peace process in Northern Ireland for 3 years, all peace processes eventually are dealt with by all parties coming together, but only, of course, once all parties have renounced violence and sued for peace and sought to be part of the peace process. Now, the chances are, everybody can see, ISIS are never going to fall into that category, are they? They're never going to want to sue for peace. And the chances are, therefore, they will need to be defeated militarily before there can be peace. But if ISIS were, whatever ISIS is in many regards, if ISIS were to renounce violence, then of course you would want to make sure that there was a peace process in the Middle East dealing with that. We should all want that. But it was a slight misrepresentation of what I said.
Do you agree with his position?
I've always said I wouldn't negotiate with ISIS. What I want to see is a political solution in Syria, which means involving all the countries in the region and the urgent negotiation of a rapid ceasefire to get aid in, an urgent negotiation to support and help the refugees, and a comprehensive plan to bring about peace across the whole region.
So to part one of Mr. Mehta's question, Jeremy Corbyn wants to scrap Trident? Why should you be taken seriously on security?
Parliament voted effectively a blank cheque for the government on the replacement of the Trident nuclear weapons system and the submarines that go with it. I ask the question back, under what circumstances would anyone use a nuclear weapon? We know that if a nuclear weapon was ever used anywhere in the world, the consequences to the environment, the economy and to human life are absolutely catastrophic. There are many in the military that do not want Trident replaced, would rather see those resources spent on more conventional issues and dealing with issues of terrorism, dealing issues of cyber security. 187 countries around the world do not have nuclear weapons. We are signatories of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and I think we should adhere to our requirements under that, which is to take steps towards disarmament. I do not believe that the development of a new nuclear weapon system is that.
You have a crazed dictator in the Far East, which is currently strengthening his nuclear deterrent. And we all, the Chinese thought that he was going to weaken in a couple of years. Clearly, they were wrong. And now, also we got the situation in Russia as well. I mean, like, you can't play games with this, Jeremy, man. It's like, think about it.
Nobody's playing games. We all actually we're serious about this, and I'm sure you are also, to bring about a peaceful world. Do nuclear weapons help to do that or not? Can we not put as much pressure as possible on China and the others to the six-party negotiations about North Korea to try and bring about a denuclearisation of the Korean Peninsula in the same way that we've managed to bring about nuclear weapons-free zones in a number of areas of the world, including Central Asia, including Africa, including Latin America, and now the discussions about an Arctic nuclear-free zone. Surely there has to be a place to go forward on bringing about nuclear disarmament. We've managed to ban chemical weapons by agreement. We've managed to ban cluster bombs by agreement. Surely we could work really hard at that by really giving meaning to what the Labour government of the 60s achieved, which was the nuclear non-proliferation treaty.
I really wish I
Well, I'm someone who believes in multilateral disarmament. I want to get rid of all nuclear weapons across the world. The big difference between me and Jeremy is how we do it. Jeremy thinks that we do it by unilaterally getting rid of ours and using moral persuasion to get America and Russia to get rid of theirs thereafter. I think that's naive, I'm afraid. I don't think that's likely to happen. Other countries have pursued that course and have got rid of their nuclear weapons, and Russia and America still held on to theirs. I also think that we've got to be incredibly serious about our duty as a Labour government in waiting to keep this country safe. And the world feels a more dangerous place to me right now than it has done pretty much at any point in my lifetime. And I don't think now is the time for us to get rid of our nuclear deterrent. I think it is the time for us to get Labour back into power in order to make the argument for multilateral disarmament across the world.
OK, we've got a number of other questions. I'll take a scattering of them. Saul Miller, please. Saul Miller. Where's Saul Miller? There.
Here.
Here you are, good.
The Jewish community is very worried about the state of the Labour Party at the moment. What is your plan to root out anti-Semitism?
Just explain a bit what you mean.
What I mean is that most Jews currently don't feel safe on the streets, and especially within the Labour Party there's been anti-Semitic reports, and they've really not been knuckling down to try and eliminate that.
Owen Smith?
Well, the young man is right, unfortunately. Jewish community in this country has traditionally looked to Labour to represent it. We've been the party that they felt, I think, closest to their views. Unfortunately, right now, it's about 8% of the Jewish community that are voting Labour, and that's a big decline in recent months and years. We have seen anti-Semitism in our party. I don't think we've been strong enough in speaking out against that, and I think that has diminished our capacity to speak out against it in the country. Because if it isn't the Labour Party that's speaking against racism and anti-Semitism and being heard in Britain, nobody else is going to do it. So the answer has to be, we've got to have zero tolerance for it in the Labour Party. We've got to make sure that anybody who's found guilty of anti-Semitism or any racism has no place in the Labour Party.
Any difference between you and your opponent on this?
Yes, because I think Jeremy has not been strong enough in speaking out against it. I think the report that he commissioned from Shami Chakrabarti isn't viewed by the Jewish community as being adequate, isn't thought to have taken the issue properly, seriously, And I think we need a new review and a much more detailed, much higher-powered review to look at the problem that we've got in Labour and to deal with it.
When I became leader, I understood that a number of people had been suspended from the party before I became leader. I also received reports of anti-Semitic remarks and behaviour at certain party events, and I'm obviously very well aware of the rise of anti-Semitism, not just in Britain, but across Europe. Point one, anti-Semitism is absolutely and totally unacceptable anywhere in our society, anywhere in our party, anywhere in our world. If I may, David,
yes,
the second point is that I did ask Shami Chakrabarti, the former director of Liberty, to undertake an investigation. I asked her to do it quite quickly because I wanted to be in a position to put a statement to our national executive and put proposals to our conference on how we deal with issues of suspension, how we deal with anti-Semitism in the party. She produced that report. We launched that report. Obviously, it should be subject to review at a later stage to see how it's getting on.
Okay.
But we have to say to everyone in the Labour Party, this is a safe place to be. This is a welcoming party to be, of people of all faiths, of all religions, to come into our party and work together to achieve the kind of social justice that we want.
When you say that, you had your own Labour MP, Ruth Smeeth, saying the fact is that you failed to intervene, and it's final proof when she was heckled at the meeting. Final proof for me that you are unfit to lead and that a Labour Party under your stewardship can't be a safe space for British Jews.
I'm very disappointed, Ruth would say that. She was herself subject to some appalling abuse earlier this week and indeed last weekend, and I send my support and sympathy and solidarity to her, as I would to anybody else who's subject to any kind of abuse. I do not accept any kind of racist abuse in any form, in any forum.
Very briefly.
Ruth Smeeth has been subject to abuse. Ruth is currently being protected by the police. So serious is the abuse that she's been subject to. And the point she makes, and the point that other members of the Jewish community have made, is that under Jeremy's leadership, we've seen people coming into the Labour Party from the hard left of politics who are bringing into our party anti-Semitic attitudes, and that cannot be acceptable.
Who are you talking about?
I think there are people on the far left of the Labour Party who are flooding into our party, and that's their word, not mine. That's their word, not mine. The AWL, the Alliance for Workers' Liberty, only a couple of weeks ago said, let's flood into the Labour Party. There are other people who've come from hard left groups who've come into Labour. Just the other day, I saw a tweet. Let me finish this, Jeremy. I saw a tweet from Jeremy's, well, purporting to be from Jeremy's team to members of a hard left group saying, you are welcome to come to Jeremy's rallies, just leave the flags and banners at home. And the reason for that was we've seen some of those flags and banners at some of Jeremy's rallies, and unfortunately some of those people are bringing an attitude into our party from the hard left that I don't think is welcome.
When you say the hard left, I mean, Labour Party is a left-wing party. Are you saying these people should not be allowed in and he's not kicking them out?
I think there are people who've come from the AWL and the SWP and some of the other hard left groups that either have not been part of the Labour Party or even been prescribed by the Labour Party as not being members of our party and not being able to join. And some of those people are, it's all over their websites, anybody can look it up, advocating joining the Labour Party in order to support Jeremy and in order to control the Labour Party.
Let me get it absolutely clear. Are you saying he's allowing it or encouraging it because it gives support
I think
to his
some
policies?
of the people around Jeremy are absolutely encouraging it. Of that there is no doubt.
I'm sure we can agree on two things. Firstly, that all of us together are going to make sure that we defeat any aspects of anti-Semitism within our party and within our society. On that, I'm sure we're absolutely agreed. Yeah?
We are agreed, but I'm not sure you're entirely committed to it, Jeremy.
Owen, that is a pretty unfair, let's say unfair way of saying it. I have spent my life opposing racism in any form, as have you.
And as have you. And many people on the left. And many people on the left. And many people on the hard left of our party who've been alongside you over many years do associate anti-Zionist, anti-imperialist, anti-Israel perspectives, and that is unfortunately colouring some of the dialogue in our party.
Let's be clear.
And I don't think you've been strong enough in speaking out against that and distancing yourself from it.
We are very clear that we're all opposed to anti-Semitism. We're all opposed to any form of racism in our society. That's the very core of what our party is about. It's the statement I put to the National Executive, which was unanimously agreed at its meeting in...
Well, some of your Jewish Labour MPs do not feel that the Labour Party under your leadership is a safe place, Jeremy.
I support them in their right to their identity and what they're saying. I support them when they're being abused, just as I would support anybody else who's suffering any kind of racism. Just as you would as well.
They don't feel support.
Let me just go back to the young man who asked the question in the first place, if we can. What's your comment on what you think?
My comment is Jeremy says he's anti-racism, yet he supports groups such as Hamas who call for the death of all Jews.
No, I do not support Hamas. You know that. What I've done is I have met people from Hamas. Yes, I have. Do I agree with them? No, on that. Do I think there is a chance one day of getting a peace agreement between Israel and Palestine? Yes, I absolutely do, and want that to happen. And I'm sure you do too.
Yep, brief point.
Following on from the gentleman's question, there's a lot of members of the Muslim community that also do not feel safe on the street. Islamophobia is also an up-and-coming issue that's affecting many people in this country. You say definitely, Owen. You're the one that endorsed the Prevent strategy, which virtually every single person... Especially after many of the terrorist atrocities that happen around the world, the backlash is the Muslim community that there's hate crimes against them. There's women that want to wear a headscarf that don't feel safe to leave the house. So my question to you is, what are you going to do to make it safer for Muslims as well as the Jewish community, apart from endorsing the Prevent programme, which everybody is virtually against?
OK, well, again, I hate to say it wrong, but you are wrong. I've not said that. What I said was Prevent, when it was started in 2005, under the Labour government, was designed to try and better integrate people who feel isolated in the Muslim community into wider society. It's clearly not worked. It wasn't working well under Labour. It's now been completely subverted by the Tories and is now seen by many people as a racist project.
So why do you want to increase the funding towards it?
I want to increase the funding in order to change it, in order to make sure that it's... In order to make sure
How would you change it then? How would you change it?
By taking it back to what it was meant to be right at the beginning, which is a scheme that was designed to integrate people. Now, we might change the name of it, obviously, but it's got to be a scheme that is designed to mitigate against radicalism, make sure that the Muslim community do feel fully integrated and celebrated in our communities. All of us want that in this country, and I would be certain that if I were the leader of the Labour Party, that would absolutely be my policy.
All right, leave that one if you would, because we've got only 5 minutes left. And
I wanted to say something to him. It was kind as well. It was friendly and kind and helpful, honestly. Owen, but don't you think that moving on from the Prevent, we should actually build a much stronger sense of community cohesion of all faiths and all groups, and generate a sense of anti-racism within our society? And the danger of Prevent was it isolated the Muslim community, targeted young Muslims and expected teachers to report on them if they thought they were going in a bad direction, and instead try to bring communities together. That's what bothers me about it, and what bothers me even more, or as much, is the growth of hate crime and racist violence on the streets of this country. We have to unite together to oppose all of that and bring about a much safer society.
We really need to be government to do it. We've only a few minutes. Newman Mir, and I want quick answers to this one. Newman Mir, please, your question.
Are junior doctors right to go on strike? Do you support them?
Do you support the junior doctors going on strike? OK, hold on. We want to know what the candidates think. It's a yes or a no.
They have every right to go on strike, but I hope the government will, even now, engage in proper negotiations with the BMA, proper negotiations with the junior doctors. They are the lifeblood of our National Health Service. They don't want to withdraw their labour. They want to support our NHS. The problem is Jeremy Hunt.
Hold on. The wasn't do they have the right to strike? The question was, are they right to go on strike? Which is a different question.
They felt they were forced into it. They've withdrawn the strike they'd planned because they were hoping to get negotiations going, and they're hoping that the government will make some progress on it. But I hope the government is listening, because those doctors are crucial to our health service.
Owen Smith?
Well, I too would always defend their right to go on strike. I don't want them to go on strike, though. I think it is potentially dangerous. That's why they've said that they've called off the 5-day strike that they were planning. But I completely understand the way they feel about our NHS. £2.5 billion in debt in this country, A&E maternity units closing down left, right and centre, the Tories undermining the NHS at every turn. It's why we need a Labour government to be able to invest once more in the NHS. I'd invest £60 billion over a 5-year parliament.
Okay. Got a lot of solid political questions. We've got a question here, an intriguing one from Susie Robinson. Let's just have that, and then I think we're almost at the end. Susie Robinson.
My dad is a retired bus driver and was proud to receive an MBE from the Queen for services to trade unions. What's your view on the monarchy?
Jeremy Corbyn.
I'm glad he received an honour. Well done, him. I just don't think that serving politicians should receive honours. I think it's an honour enough to be elected.
That wasn't Susie's question. Susie's question was, what's your view of the monarchy?
I thought the view was on the honours.
No, the question, I've got it here, and she can do it again if you like. What's your view of the monarchy?
I'm not campaigning on the issue of the monarchy. I'm campaigning on the issues of democracy within our society.
I'm in favour of retaining the monarchy. I think the Queen does a great job. I'm sure your dad was very delighted to get the award, and good on him.
OK. And so, last point. Patrick Morello. Very brief, please.
How will you heal the divisions in the Labour Party? And as winner, will you offer a post to a loser? Or as loser, will you serve under the winner?
I think we've had that answer
well.
pretty well. Your
I
answer?
want the party to come together. I want us to end the election campaign, agree on our general political direction on austerity and social justice and all the things that we agree on, and of course I'd be delighted to work with Owen to bring about that social justice in Britain.
OK, and will you offer him a post?
I've already done it. I think he should be the president or the chairman of the party, but crucially,
But it doesn't exist.
we've got to unite
It doesn't exist, Owen.
The chairman does,
It doesn't exist.
Well, you know, the chairman
It doesn't
does.
exist.
Crucially, we've got to unite and win, David.
We end where we started, but our time's up, I'm afraid. Thank you both very much indeed. Question time. Now, question time is going to be in Salisbury next week. Back to our regular panels. The Education Secretary, Justine Greening, for the Tories. Labour Shadow Chancellor, John MacDonald. Tony Blair's former Director of Communications, Alistair Campbell. That's next week. Hold it. The following week, we're going to be in Sutton Coldfield. So if you come to either of those programmes, go to our website or call 0330 123 99 88. My thanks to you, Jeremy Corbyn, to you, Owen Smith. To our audience.
Thank you. Thanks very much.